Greetings, film freaks. We are the Podcorn Kernels. Join us as we discuss the hard and often indigestible truths that are at the center of the fluffy and delicious world of cinema.
What's poppin', people? Welcome to the Podcorn Kernels podcast. My name is Adam, and joining me in your earholes is Harry. Say hello, Harry.
I hope that when Jeremy Beadle got to the pearly gates and God offered him 2 standard hands, he refused him.
On today's episode, we will be talking about M. This is a 1931 film directed by Fritz Lang and stars Peter Lorre, Otto Wernick, and Gustav Gründgens. IMDb describes the synopsis as follows. When the police in a German city are unable to catch a child murderer, other criminals join in the manhunt. Here is an original song to support the synopsis. There is a child murderer, murderer, murderer. There is a child murderer roaming on the streets. There is a child murderer, murderer, murderer. There is a child murderer, don't accept his sweets.
Kindermord mit Ballon, mit Ballon, mit Ballon. Kindermord mit Ballon, mit Ballon.
Let's start with some facts about the film. Fritz Lang's cruelty to the actors was legendary. Peter Lorre was thrown down the stairs into the cellar over a dozen times. When Lang wanted to hire Lorre for Human Desire over 2 decades later in 1954, the actor refused. I don't blame him.
Because of abuse.
Well, being thrown down stairs over a dozen times.
Do you know what? When I saw that scene towards the end where he's pushed a little down the stairs, and I thought they look like real concrete stairs.
Yeah, and were stuntmen even a thing back in 1931?
I shouldn't think so, because films were only just getting on the way, so the actor was the physicality on stage, wasn't he? So when they were a stage actor, they would be throwing themselves into the mix, but it was more dramatised.
Yeah.
But yeah, one slip up, that could be a hip, rib, bloody hell.
That's a real staircase, and that's a real actor, so not a trained stuntman.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to work with someone who made me fall down the stairs.
Hell no.
Over 12 times.
Yeah.
Because that hurts. Falling down 2 steps hurt, but like 10 plus.
With
that would really
speed.
hurt. Yeah, and he's quite a short, dumpy fellow. And then in that scene when he's falling down the stairs, there's loads of other people there as well. So he's not just banging onto stairs, he's banging into kneecaps and elbows. That would fucking hurt.
But surely this is the most exciting time in cinema, because there is no health and safety regulations. It's all new. Sound is new. Telling a story through a camera is new. So it's kind of like, I'd let him throw me down the stairs. Oh yeah.
There's no health and safety in 1931 though.
No, if anything, it was leading up to the abolition of health and safety.
Yeah, totally, yeah. The second fact's a lengthy one, so bear with me. The film is supposedly based on the real-life case of serial killer Peter Kürten, called The Vampire of Dusseldorf, yes. Oh, you've heard of him?
Yeah, there was a few German child killers. Carry on.
His crimes in the 1920s horrified Germany. However, director Fritz Lang has expressly denied that he drew any inspiration from the case. Nevertheless, he and his wife, Thea von Harbo, researched the crimes carefully, consulting with German police, visiting murder scenes, interviewing sex offenders in prison, and even talking to detectives in Scotland Yard in London. According to Land biographer Paul Jensen, the director spent 8 days doing field research in a mental institution.
I think you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell just how spot on some of the hypotheses and theories are of who the killer could be from the characters within the film, because they even say someone like this has to live amongst us.
Yeah.
To have continued and got away with it for so long, he must live a normal life. And he references 2 other killers, Herman and some other guy, who were real killers, and he talks about how they managed to maintain their killing streak. And if you think of, even if you watch Mindhunter now, and they talk about organised and disorganised killers, and what they're referring to is organised.
Yeah.
Because he's maintaining a normal life, he dresses well, he walks around, people trust him, and he's doing the murders. So it's so far ahead of its time.
It's crazy.
For almost 100 years ago, there's so many things in it that are still being used today and are still being theorised. Very Freudian, very psychoanalytic.
But that homework, even nowadays, I respect a director that puts in that research, puts in that time before production to research the project. Like you said, 100 years ago, this director went all the way to London, spoke to people that are of most mentally damaged, deranged minds to try and draw inspiration, to try and flesh out this child serial killer character. It's just really impressive to me that all the way back then, there was someone out there who's so meticulous in his endeavours, so determined to make the best, most representative of that sort of person.
Well, you think Fritz Lang was on the ground floor if you think about it. You know, the cinema was very new, really, in the 30s. It had just come from its silent movie era where there wasn't much of a story or plot apart from maybe Nosferatu 2 or something. But you think it's a golden age for the beginning of cinema. It's like a gold rush in the West. And to think that he was sitting there and that's where he had to research for his film. He cared about it enough to go and do that research. You think in comparison today, there's such lazy filmmaking. So to think, like you said, Scotland Yard. Imagine a film of that, Fritz Lang getting inspired by a film and going to Scotland Yard, going to a mental asylum to study it. That would be a great biopic film.
I would love to see that.
It'd be a great film.
I can imagine that he would have faced a lot of uncertain responses from the people at Scotland Yard or medical professionals, someone with that level of interest. Surely at that time he must have faced some pushback, people sort of being like, hang on a minute, why are you so interested in that? Because now it's commonly accepted that we all have this fascination with killers and deranged minds and the worst of humanity. But back then, I don't think it would have been as acceptable.
Well, nothing's changed, though, is it? Because even in the film, they depict the crowds as so eager to look at the newspapers, the headlines.
Yeah.
And there's still that fascination with serial killers, even though the word hadn't been coined yet.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, the research he put into it. They tried to cancel the film as well, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah, they tried to stop it because they thought it was anti-fascist or something, and then he had to explain to the Nazi party what it was about, and they let him make it. But yeah, it got pushed back, the whole film. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're right in the fact that police officers were a bit like, you what?
Yeah.
You're making a film about a child killer? Who the hell's going to watch that?
So I don't know, well, I'll be honest, I don't know anything of Fritz Lang's work other than this. Do you know if he's a director known for controversy? Is that how his legacy is sort of left? He always trying to make these really controversial films, or do you know if he
did Metropolis, didn't he?
Yeah, and again, I know that's a very highly regarded film. I couldn't tell you what it's about. I've never seen it. I would love to see it.
Is it the one with the metallic robot looking thing on the front?
Yeah, I think I recognise the poster.
Silent movie, wasn't it?
Is it? It looks like it's quite futuristic. Again, ahead of its times, maybe almost science fiction. I'm not
1922. I don't know. I don't think so. M was his first experience with sound.
Okay.
So it must be silent, I assume. Yeah, I think it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. But I know he'd done Metropolis and M, and I've only seen M, of which I'm really glad I've seen it.
Yeah, me too, man. Final fact, it's included among the 1001 movies you must see before you die, edited by Steven Schneider.
Schneider!
Can you tell me what you liked about M?
There's a lot of things. Where I start with, though, mine's more historical, and it was something that came to me whilst watching the film. And it blows me away that this movie, there would have been notorious historical figures and current influencers that have sat and watched this film. My eyes have just watched an hour and 40 minutes of what I'd say highly likely Hitler also watched. And Goebbels definitely watched, because he was this propaganda minister, wasn't he? And he loved movies. He made movies. So while sitting there watching it, I was sitting there thinking, it's kind of like when you see the Eiffel Tower and you're in Paris, you realise that Hitler laid his eyes upon that as well and conquered it. And then when you're sitting there watching M, you realise like how many Nazis pre-World War II sat and watched it. And I was getting all freaked out. Yeah. And then I started looking at the characters in the film and thinking like, who in that film died in the war, or who didn't make it through the genocide, you know? And it's so fascinating because it's not just a movie. It's not like watching a film nowadays where there's none of that depth to it. Like, you're watching something that was very historical film-wise, very historical because of history and the time it was set in, and it just freaks me out. Like, I've watched a film that Hitler's seen.
Yeah, there's a crazy thought.
Well, his emotion would have been, it could have been the same as mine at the right points. It could have been like, wow, that's really good film work, or, oh, that's terrifying, or, wow, look at Peter Lorre's eyes. Like, he could have thought the same things I'm thinking because he's seen the same film. And that freaked me out, and I thought, how amazing. I've never had that feeling before in a film.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take, actually. I didn't think that, but I imagine any film from that sort of era, and like you said, any like Nazi propaganda films, obviously he would have seen them and okayed them.
Yeah.
But to think that you could have shared a shared experience with the most like notoriously evil man to have
Yeah.
ever existed, potentially.
You could have both enjoyed it. His favourite film was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
No.
Yeah.
Because
Loved
he
it.
was a dwarf, or...
No, but you think of it at the time. Imagine seeing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and cinema's barely a thing. That would blow you away.
Well, I guess it would, yeah.
Animation, isn't it? It's incredible, and it was an old German folktale, so I could see why he liked it. I think he hated King Kong.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. He either hated it or loved it. He had a strong opinion about one of them, but he was a prolific moviegoer.
Yeah.
And more again about, so I said there was like notorious historical people that probably saw this, and I started, when the leitmotif is being used in this film, it just made me think Tarantino's seen this. I just sat there and I went, yeah, he's definitely seen this. He likes this because of the...
Yeah, in Kill Bill,
In Kill Bill, he uses a leitmotif for a character, and that's what happens in this with Peter Lorre. I think the piece of music is called, I might be wrong, In the Hall of the Mountain King.
So for anyone that might not know, can you explain what a leitmotif is?
It's a phrase of music used to signify a character or a place, and it would have been used a lot in theatre. And then Fritz Lang, obviously, coming from the only medium that everyone knew, theatre, stage, or street performers, is taking what he can from that and putting it into film. And leitmotif works, especially nowadays, especially if you're Tarantino doing a film like Kill Bill.
Yeah.
So it doesn't Jaws is a leitmotif.
Yeah.
Dun-dum. That's the shark.
So it's almost like a callback to like a piece of music that represents a character or a theme within the film.
Well, yeah, without seeing the character's face, which you don't for a lot of this, do you?
No.
So I say for the opening third of the film, now you might have seen him by then, but you're seeing him very obscured version of Peter Lorre, or Law, and the whistle is identifying him for the audience, which I think's great. I think that's so clever, and it came from stage, and it does work.
I think when it works, it is brilliant. Like you said with Kill Bill, that whistling in that is iconic. But when it doesn't work, it's atrocious.
Have you got any?
The one that springs to mind is I put myself through 3.5 or 4 hours worth of the Zack Snyder Justice League, every time Wonder Woman was coming on the screen, they'd have this like Middle Eastern, like female sort of scream singing, but the problem is she was on the screen so much that piece of music felt like it was coming every 30 seconds.
That's shit.
And it was so mishandled that it was laughable for me. Now, I know a lot of people love that film. I hated it. I will never sit through that again. I judge myself for sitting through it the first time. But when it's played so frequently, it's like watching WWE and the theme music coming in at the Royal Rumble. Like there's another wrestler coming in, here's their music. It happens so much. And yeah, when it's bad, it's awful. But in M, it certainly does work.
The thing is, if you notice it, that's the issue in that sense. But I agree with you there. Where I can say I've had a similar experience is the recent Hugh Jackman reminiscence when he narrates every 2 seconds. Every time he narrates, I saw the shoulders and the posture of everyone in the cinema just keep getting lower and lower. Every time he's narrating his noir, I didn't know, who was she? Where am I? It's like, stop.
It's a problem with cinema, especially nowadays. They over dilute something, so it can be a gag within a comedy film that's just played over and over again. It could be a quirk from a character. When it's a device that really works, like in M, you hear that whistling and it's chilling because you know he's in the vicinity. Shit's going to go down. There's a child murderer on the prowl and he's hunting.
But that's his killer side, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, so in the film, the character played by Peter Lorre has this compulsion to kill, and he claims that he disassociates with that element of his psyche. So he's not aware that it's happening. And when the whistle comes in, you know it's that part of him that's...
It's on the hunt.
Yeah. And it's chilling.
That's his shark fin, isn't it, in the water?
But... and again, I think this topic, this point is going to run quite strongly throughout this episode. But to think that that's 100 years ago,
insane,
and it's that well thought out, and it's so well put together, it really is astounding.
That's my second like, actually, how surprising the writing is, how clever the film is. It's so layered, like the fact that the character who sort of breaks the case open, he's a blind balloon seller, and he's there in the start of the film when he's selling a balloon to a young girl who's with the killer, and all he can do is hear the man's voice and hears his whistle. later on in the film, because that girl goes missing, he knows what to listen for, and he hears it again. So to think that Peter Lorre's character's downfall was to a blind man, but what was amazing imagery was when this girl disappears at the start, she's bought a balloon, and it's sort of a ball rolls out of a bush, and the balloon is hitting electrical pylons, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it just flies off. It's a very powerful image, and that image returns later. And this blew me away. It's such clever writing, because the blind man puts his hand on Peter Lorre's shoulder at the end of the film when they're having like a criminal court of law for him to decide what to do with him. And when he sees the balloon, it wrecks him. Like, it brings back the murder. And I thought, that's amazing, because I've referenced it again, but in Mindhunter, they use a thing called a rock, because they know a killer killed a girl with a rock, so they put it in the room, because when he sees it, it throws him off.
Yeah.
And they start to call it, we need a rock, the rock.
Yeah.
So in this film, 100 years ago, him seeing the balloon again is that rock, and it's the one that throws him and reminds him of the murder, and it really sets him off into that massive tirade he goes on.
Yeah.
Amazing, so clever.
It is. It's a smart move, because they could have easily found the weapon and shown him a bloodied knife, and that could have brought it back. But the fact it's something that's like a emblem of innocence,
of the girl, yeah.
Just a balloon, and that's what shakes him, because he lured this girl in with a peeling balloon. That's why he managed to take her and kill her. Mad. And yeah, it's just shocking, like how ahead of its time it really was.
What did one of the police officers say? His weapons are sweets and toys. That is amazing writing.
Yeah.
Amazing writing.
There'd be writers, directors that would be proud to come up with something like that today, 100 years on.
Amazing.
Yeah. Any more likes?
I love how they gave background to all the different warring tribes within this film. So you've got your criminals, your beggars, and the police, and they've got their own little groups, and they're trying to figure out a way to stop the killer, because it's affecting everyone, happiness, business, etc. And I think that there's this lovely exposition of the beggars, who in the end of the pivotal part of capturing the killer, but where the camera basically goes through the beggars' like underground little vault, doesn't it? And there's a guy collecting cigarette butts, all different sizes and shapes for different like values and stuff. And I thought, that's amazing, because even now, walking through London, I'll see a homeless guy go over to a bin and pick up certain cigarette butts and discard a couple and pick up others. And I thought, like, has anything actually changed in 100 years? You know, that they're thinking about killers, the media frenzy with murder, and how weirdly fascinated we are with the darkness. And then that whole beggar thing, I was just like, it's so mad. This film's kind of timeless, and it also still holds up in its theorem.
Yeah.
For today. The last one I thought was excellent was the cinematographer Fritz Lang, I think his name is. The way he uses darkness and reflection in the film. So you see Peter Lorre's face a lot in mirrors and in glass. And the acting he does, it's very theatrical, but it works. It's madness. Yeah. It's kind of like Joker.
It is, yeah. It's over the melodramatic,
but effective. His cinematography is brilliant. He also did Nosferatu.
Yeah, I mean, I mirror your thoughts, because I've got a lot I liked about the film, and top of my list is how it broadened my horizons. Now, I'm someone who prides myself on my film knowledge, but vintage cinema is definitely a bit of a blind spot in my movie repertoire. So watching M increased my back catalogue of films from yesteryear, and I was impressed at how gripping a film from 1931 can still be. Now, I went into this one thinking, well, it's going to be at the very least watchable, because it's highly regarded. It's full of accolades. Cinephiles love it, and I did worry that I wouldn't be able to look past the date and how aged it is. 100 years, all the technological advances and acting evolution and all of that. I thought I might really struggle with this, but it was so easy to look past. The overacting, the sound quality and all that was so easy to ignore, because the story was so captivating.
Strong opening with the mum waiting for the daughter to come home.
Yeah, and it does a really, really good job of drawing the audience in and keeping it in its palm of its hand for the whole time. And I think it's testament to Fritz Lang's vision and everyone involved that a film can still hold up so long after. I mean, we've spoken about films before that were made in the 90s that we thought was the pinnacle of cinema when we first saw them. Watch them now, they're unwatchable. And then you get films like this. I put it in the same bracket as something like 12 Angry Men. It doesn't matter when you watch it. When the story's that good and it's written so well, it's always going to be quality. It's timeless.
You should never feel bad about your reservations of older films, though, because like if someone says to you, Roadhouse, oh, it's an amazing film, you know it isn't.
Yeah.
And you watch it, and it is just you laugh at it now. But at the time, it was being made as a sort of a serious action film, I suppose.
I can't believe that was ever a serious film.
Yeah.
He pulls a man's heart out of his ribcage.
I can't remember. No, I don't think that's that one.
He does do something with someone's organ. He pulls something out of someone.
He was wearing very tight pants.
Yeah.
Very tight.
Well, yeah.
But that contrast is justified. I'd watch 12 Angry Men. I really want to watch like Vertigo and Rear Window and stuff. I'm excited after watching this to watch older films.
Yeah.
Like if anything's like that, for the effort they put in, the 8 days the director spent in an asylum, you know, the research behind it and the storytelling, it was like watching a really well written book. And so you look at that and it's really weird. It's like, it's kind of like the Ice Age of film. So we were doing fine, then we had an Ice Age, Roadhouse, and then it thawed out, and then we came back with Seven and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an Ice Age in film.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Whenever I watch a film like this, it sort of drives me to watch older films. The problem is there's so much new content released nowadays that despite my best intentions, I will always go to the new releases. So that's what replaces my wanting to go and dive back into the back catalogue of films.
I think you can trust in Nat Schneider's book because I don't think he's ever been wrong with one I've seen in there, apart from Holy Motors. There's probably a few in there that are a bit too art house for me, and
that's a personal taste,
not really plot based. Yeah, like that opening part of his 1001. They tend to be the older films, don't they? At the very start, it's only towards, and as the end as you get close to the end, it starts to modernise. So yeah, I'd trust a lot of what he's put on there.
Yeah, I'd go with these words, and I do think if you are a fan of film, I think it is important to visit the films that made cinema what it is today, because I don't think you can, if you watch a film like you say, like Seven, and really enjoy it, it's a brilliant film, well made, well written, all of those things. I think if you respect a film like that, you owe it almost to David Fincher and the genre to go back and visit almost like a patient zero of that genre. Yeah. Because without films like M walked, so films like Seven could run. Yeah. And while I think David Fincher's a big film fan, I assume he's seen a film like this. If he hasn't, David, pull your fucking finger out.
I'm sure he has.
But I don't think films like Seven could exist if it weren't for things like it.
Well, it's brave, isn't it? So for Lang to propose to even do this in the early 30s, when these were very unspoken. I mean, you think it wasn't long after, you know, suffragettes, and like you didn't talk about abuse and you didn't talk about mental health. It was very quiet.
Yes.
So for him to be brave enough to go and propose a child killer film and show that the character's actually grey, not black and white, that he actually admits to his compulsion to kill.
Yeah.
One serial killer said it's like holding in a sneeze, trying not to kill. Obviously, it's very hard for public to find any sympathy with them, because if it's compulsion, what can we do with you? So I thought that was excellent at the end of the film, where they're sitting there discussing the legality of killing him or not.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and that issue still exists today.
Of course.
Left and right. It's so hard to determine it. Is he evil? But what you got to look at the end of the day is the victims.
Yeah.
And if he ever has an opportunity to do it again, blow his brains out.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, that's where I stood. Yeah. In that jury, I was like, you got to kill him. You put him out of his misery.
The way they show that in the film as well is fascinating, because it's easy to paint. You think of the term criminal, and it's easy to paint every criminal with the same brush. You've broken the law, you deserve to do time, you deserve to be punished. And there's truth in that, of course there is. But in the film, the people that are the jury are criminals. And it shows that you can be a criminal
for monetary gain.
Yeah, you can be a criminal and have a conscience. You can do bad things but be a good person. So the fact in this film, you've got the worst a person can be in Peter Law as a child serial killer. And the people that are bringing him to justice are people that normal society will look down their nose at, but they still have a conscience.
Yeah.
They're still morally astute. And I think that the fact that, again, you know, I'll probably say it another 5 times in the episode, but the fact that this was done in 1931 and it's that broad net of society and
morals.
What morals and what it means to be human and to adhere to rules and stuff like that. It's mind-boggling that it's that advanced.
Yeah, it makes me excited for German cinema. As you know, I've always been a huge fan of French cinema. So to now realise that a door's been opened, I'm so intrigued. And I think we spoke about it once, but Michael Fassbender's character in Inglourious Bastards, he studied German film. So it's amazing that his character would have known this film amongst many others, and how fascinated he was with German cinema pre-World War II. Yeah, and it's and Nosferatu's German as well. So they pretty much opened the door to major films. Yeah, and Hollywood started picking up pace and doing their own movies as well. But mad because a bunch of their Germans went over to Hollywood, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah, before I think when Hitler went into power or World War II was about to break out, loads of the talent, directors, actors went to Hollywood. Yeah, and started becoming studio moguls and big actors out there. So really, really interesting, that blend.
And that's what one of my biggest loves of film is that you discover something like M, and it opens a door, and you're like, well, now I want to explore more German cinema, because if I enjoyed this one that was made in 1931, what other treasures are there for me to uncover? And
they're all public domain, so if you even want to watch M, the whole film is on YouTube. Yeah, without adverts.
I wish I knew that before I watched it with adverts.
Oh, full. And Nosferatu's public domain, so they're out there. Go on YouTube. Blend Schneider with YouTube and you'll be able to watch some classics, I should imagine.
Nice. Second thing I liked about the film, again, we touched on it already, is how pleasantly surprised I was with it. I expected this to be decent, given its critical acclaim and its reputation within classic cinema, yet I was shocked at how ahead of its time it was and how engaging it still manages to be. I think M is a timeless triumph that still holds its own almost a century after its release. Now, I don't know how many more times I will say that, but that's the thing that resonates with me, is from minute 1 to 120, and then the second time watching it, the whole time sitting there watching it, I was like, how is this? How is this a film from back then? How is it still so strong, still so engrossing and captivating? Yeah, huge fan.
I had to pause it and think, bloody hell, how were they onto it that much back then?
Yeah.
It almost makes you wonder, if that war hadn't have happened, what a marvellous cinema could have been going around that top, rather than the Nazi propaganda stuff that they were doing. Imagine the films that could have flourished throughout the 40s if there hadn't been a war. Because obviously post-World War II, the 50s was wrought with just big American Hollywood World War II films where they triumph over fascism. Yeah, we would have, we've got rid of all of them pro sort of war films, which they weren't very anti-war post-World War II. They were quite pro. It would have been amazing to have imagined where German cinema could have gone without this huge gap in its life, because they're forever apologising 100 years later.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Germany are always playing catch up because of what happened with Second World War. Yeah. It's tough. I wonder, do you think that there's an element of ignorance on our modern eyes, on our part, thinking that we're so more advanced, and us looking at a film like M and sitting there going, oh, wow, they're really ahead of the times, when in reality, cinema was further ahead than we give it credit to without knowing the facts?
Back then, because it was a new medium, there was patience and there was a lot of love and effort put into it. And it was a pure idea and came to fruition through Fritz Lang's want to make the film. It's nothing to do with money. It was nothing to do with money. It was a vision which he had, a pure one, and he put it on film. Yeah. And he put his research in. I think nowadays it's such a struggle to find that passion in a film and to have it so well layered.
Well, that's what the film does. Yeah, that's what the film does. It really makes you think and really makes you appreciate like what what history is, and certainly it makes me want to dive in and explore more. My final favourite thing about it was the cop and criminal transitions. Within the film, both the lawful authorities and the criminal underworld are both resolute in hunting down this serial killer. The way the film flits between the police and the criminals and their plans in taking down a common enemy is really clever, and it felt like a plot device that must have been fairly unique for its time. Now, I do think you watch a film like M, and you're not watching it and go, oh, that's like this film, because it predates all the other films.
Yeah.
The problem with cinema now is you watch a film and it's very rare to come up with a new idea. So now you watch a film and you're like, oh, that's like Seven, or it's a film that's like Silence of the Lambs.
You're right.
Any new film made, it's easy to compare. What's so fascinating with this one is, and again, I don't know, there could be films older or of a similar time that this has drawn inspiration to. I'm not sure. But what makes it so unique and so impressive is this has to be one of the first. This isn't drawing inspiration. This isn't from the makers of whatever big film it was. This was, like you said, ground zero. This was patient zero.
There couldn't have been any, to my knowledge, there could not have been any serial killer films before M. There would have been films where it was more, mythological, like vampires and wolves and stuff with...
Their stories are as old as time, aren't they?
Well, they're German fables, most of them.
Yeah.
So... I think you're right. I don't think this is ground zero for serial killer movies. It has to be. And it'd be brilliant if it isn't. If there's more out there, I'd love to go and find out what they were, but I can't see. Such brave social commentary at the time.
Yeah.
Excellent, very Freudian. I reckon he took a lot from all of that, theorising about psychoanalysis and how someone can be that way. Like didn't they say something about his handwriting? Yeah, there's a bit in it where they're talking about handwriting. He goes, the way he uses that word would imply that he's sexually angry or something.
Yeah, and how are you profiling someone on their handwriting?
That's the word.
In the 30s?
Profiling.
Yeah, it's
there's profiling in this film.
Yeah, it's a madness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I've loved films most of my life. I found my fascination and my adoration of them from a fairly young age.
Land Before Time.
Oh yeah, don't. Still too soon, man. I must admit, and I hate to admit it, that when people used to speak about old films, I would almost be a bit snobbish, like, oh, get with the times, man. Like, oh, why are you watching a film there's so much better films? And then their argument would be, well, that film wouldn't be made if it wasn't for this film. As I've got older, I've realised they are right. They are correct.
It's evolution.
And I have a huge admiration for those people that not only know old cinema, but live and breathe it. Like we do with film now. They know the directors, they know the stories behind the films, the actors, what they've done, all of that. There's people out there that only know the classics, and even not even classics, just older films that haven't got a huge reputation. I've got a newfound respect for them, and I certainly, that after watching them, it's really has driven me to really dig in.
It's exciting to know that there's a treasure trove out there full of movies you haven't seen. Look, just because they are old, they're thrown away, almost like subtitled films for people nowadays. Like, I can't stand subtitles. It's like that. For me, I'm excited. The minute I turned the film off, I was like, there must be so much out there
exactly
that I haven't seen.
And that's the thing, as I get older and my love of film has developed, it can have a tendency to get a bit laborious, because I see a new blockbuster film out and I can be excited because of the huge names in front of the camera or behind it. And then you watch it, and then if it is a big blockbuster, you're like, I've seen this before
a million times.
I know that the protagonist is going to come out victorious. If it's a love story, they're going to meet, and then there's going to be peril, and then they're going to get over it, and they're going to end up together. You've seen it all before. So while that can be exhausting now going forward, like you say, it's lovely to know there is such a huge back catalogue of films that I can go and see and be like, oh, okay, well, this is the thoughts they were having back then, and oh shit, that's like this film. And then you can equate the two, and you can see what the films have drawn inspiration from. And like you say, it is exciting, man.
I can only think of 2 films in the last 10 years where I've had similar feeling as I did with them recently. One of them was your suggestion, Dogtooth, as an original idea, as an idea, yeah. But as a film, Dogtooth is, for me, it's the same feeling I have with M. It's so original that it's exciting because it's something you haven't seen. It's not a copy-paste job. And the skin I live in. Films like that remind me of M in how brave it is, how odd it is. And I love that experience now. I find that's where I truly get enjoyment from film now. I mean, I struggle a lot with the big blockbusters now. Obviously, growing up in the 90s, that was bread and butter to me. I loved it. It's like being into a pop band when you're young and then realising they were awful later.
Yeah.
You grow as a film fan and you start to, what you're looking for in the end. And I'm looking for originality now. Blockbusters don't cut it so much for me anymore. I can enjoy them, I suppose, but the feeling I had finishing M is like The Skin I Live In, is like Deer Skin, is like the Dogtooth. They're just like, it's a new adventure.
That's it.
It's new.
I think it's unfortunate the time we live in now. It's to appeal to the masses. So those new experiences, those edgier storylines, those not so simple plots, you can really only find them in independent cinema. And
and foreign
and world cinema, exactly. And actors that tend to go for it are ones that are really trying to broaden their horizons, show what else they can do. It is a shame that the big budgeted blockbusters don't tend to take big risks, because they know it's not going to attract the big audiences, and it's a money-making business at the end of the day. And it is sad to find those films like the ones you mentioned. You have to look for them now. It's not like, the new film out of the cinema this week, it's Yorgos Lanthimos film, the one that did Dogtooth and The Lobster. Those showings at the cinema, you'd be lucky to get 3 of them in a week, especially when every other week there's a Marvel or a DC or a Fast and Furious film coming out. They have to contend with that.
Do you find, though, when you suggest these films to people, they just brush them off? So I've got a friend that loves superhero movies and Trek and big blockbusters, but spent the last 2-3 years moaning about, it's all the same, they just keep shitting out new films. I'm like, watch this film, mate, you'll love it. Give it a watch. No.
Yeah.
Why not? Oh, no, it's crap. It's just going to be like, no, we'll give it a chance. But just because it's foreign or just because it's a bit older, they're not interested.
I think there's a difference between a fair weather film fan and a cinephile. Fair weather film fan, if you've got the stars of the programme on a breakfast morning show plugging their programme, or on the radio on their drive to work, they're going to go, I'll go and see that's the new big release. But if you've got someone who's big into film and they don't want to be moved, they just want to be entertained, but they're the same people, like you say, that complain when the film's the same. Of course they're the same, because they're trying to get the bums on seats. They don't care.
You want new experience. That's what I want. So I would never go every year religiously, say, to Menorca. Just keep going back and forth. When there's a Vietnam out there, or a Japan, a little dusty city in America, you try new things. It enriches you as a person. So when you watch a new film, you learn another little thing, and it's in your head now. Fritz Lang will forever be bouncing around in my head now. He has one of my favourite directors ever, because I watched them. And that's amazing.
And that's beautiful. But that people find they find comfort in that routine. So they go to Menorca because, I know there's a restaurant I like there, hotel and staff there are lovely. I'll go there every year because we always have a good time. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you are limiting yourself. So these film fans that go and just watch Marvel or go and watch the latest, biggest blockbuster, they are limiting themselves.
If they're happy in it, fine.
Exactly.
It's the ones that are saying, everything's shit now, everything's the same. No, you're not looking.
No, exactly.
You're not looking.
That's perfect. You do have to, if you want to find the best truffles, you've got to go digging, right?
Yeah, and don't take a pig, take a dog.
There we go. Is there anything you didn't like about him?
So, being a bit into the darkness, I read through all of the actors and who was in it, because at the time I was just fascinated if the person who I was watching on screen, did they die in World War II? Did they join an armed services or armed forces? Because that is another amazing part of history. And I found one, and this really, really, really cut me when I read this. So the guy who plays the balloon seller, he's played by an actor called George John, but he's the blind guy who sells balloons.
Yeah.
He was Jewish, and he got sent to the Lodz ghetto and died in 1941. Nazis. And I just thought, he's German-born, in German cinema, a great film. His character is one of the best characters in the film.
Pivotal in the film.
Yeah. And because he was Jewish, the guy got sent to the Lodz ghetto in Poland and died in 1941. There was still 3 more years of war after that, so he died quite quickly. And to imagine that a guy that you're watching on screen, and some of them actors, were revered by the Nazi party. So the guy who plays the safecracker, Gustav Gründgens, he was revered by the Nazi party. Goebbels and Göring loved him. And this is really odd. So George John was killed in one of the ghettos. Gustav Gründgens was homosexual. And the Nazis sent homosexuals to concentration camps. And instead of a yellow star, they had a pink triangle on their arm to show that they were...
They did not know that?
Yeah, to show that they were homosexual, right?
Bloody hell.
He got let off because of his high reputation. And when...
So it's selective?
Yeah, it was like, oh, send the Jew, but this German's got too much reputation. We can't send him. So even within the Nazi party, it was still nepotism.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So nepotism. So... Send the Jew guy who played the blind supporting actor, but one of the lead criminals in the big leather jacket who's actually a homosexual, and homosexuals were dying in the thousands in Nazi Germany and Nazi Europe. But he gets away with it. And he tried to join the armed forces as well. When Goebbels called his total war speech, he tried to join, and Göring stopped him and went and gave him the label of important artist to a German history. So he was let out of the war as well. He didn't have to fight in the war. He got let off for being homosexual. But poor George John gets killed in a essentially a concentration camp.
Jesus.
Really interesting about Gustav Gründgens. I was reading that in the 60s he was travelling the world and he was in Manila and he killed himself. He took sleeping pills. I think it was to do with his homosexuality and what happened in the World War. But he wrote on a little note, I believe that I took too many sleeping pills. I feel a little strange. Let me sleep long.
Oh God!
You could do a wicked film, man, that covers Fritz Lang's journey into doing this film and some of the actors who then left the film. You could do George John going to the concentration camp, and you could do Gustav Gründgens killing himself in Manila.
Yeah,
it'd be an amazing film.
I'd certainly watch it, but you watch a film as a novice of this era of cinema and someone who doesn't know an awful lot about the history that shaped our world, and you consider what happened in the years after this film.
That's
and
right,
it's a madness.
That's what I dislike about it.
Yeah. To all that follows this, as horrible as the subject matter in this film is, it's awful. Yeah. What happens in the real life worldwide after this film pales in comparison.
Well, they weren't hiding like killers in an alleyway. They were doing it in broad daylight.
Almost proud.
Killing children.
Jesus.
Gassing them.
God,
and
horrible
so
thought.
Reading into the film, my dislike would be, this horrible turn of fate that happened after. These are artists.
Yeah,
they're just actors and artists getting on with it. And one dies in a prison, and the other one kills himself in Manila. Like, it's just a mad that you're watching a film, realizing that in 9 years, a world war is going to kick off.
And it's similar to what you equated to earlier when watching the film and thinking that I've got a shared experience with this notorious idiot watching this film, and you just think that when this film was being made, everyone involved, like anything that you create and you're proud of, these people would be going around going, you know what, I've just been in a film, telling their friends and family, I've just been in a film that's going to make people look at films completely differently. Like, I'm part of something here. Like, it's really out there, being really excited, and then 9 years later their lives are being ended or questioned because of their religious beliefs or their sexuality. It's absolute madness.
Insanity.
We're very fortunate to live in the time we
Extremely.
do. Any more dislikes about him?
I think looking for a table that a letter may or may not have been written on is an awful lead in a murder case.
Yeah.
I think...
and the fact it works out as well.
Well, that's like saying the person who did this had hands. It's like... But when I started to instantly think that when he was checking a table, then it developed a little bit further, and I thought, oh, okay, it's got a bit more traction there because he wrote the letter so hard. There's obviously an impression on the paper. Yes. And that's how they could seal it. It might have actually made a groove in the wood.
That's it. They were speaking when they were analysing his handwriting. It's obviously a frustrated individual, so it's not just someone that's jotting down some thoughts. He's an aggressive man who's not of mentally stable conditioning.
But in a city, they're reaching if a table is what's going to crack it open.
Yeah. I think if that was a plot device in a film now, I don't think we'd be able to look past it.
No, we'd tear it to pieces.
We'd be like, okay, so what, you're just going to search every single home and look at every single table and, oh, look, you found the first table you've looked at. That's mightily convenient.
Like, I think this person has 2 lungs, a heart, and probably feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get started.
Yeah. From the evidence I've seen, I determine that this person probably eats and drinks, sleeps and shits
What cigarettes does he smoke? One of 7 or 8 brands.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That limits it, especially in a time where every fucker's smoking anyway. Yeah. Any more dislikes?
Just how realistic the media frenzy is when they're selling papers because a child's been killed. And it's not through preparing to look after your kids. It's not to take advice on looking after your kids. It's just, oh my God, he killed a kid again.
It's almost to be part of something, isn't it? It's like when there's a awful event that happens around the globe, whether it's a natural disaster or a planned terrorist attack, people swarm onto social media to send their thoughts and prayers and put a picture up of a flag. They're not doing anything other than to self-fulfill, self-gratify themselves, being like, oh look, I care. You're not doing it for good reason. Same in this film. They see the scandal, they're not interested in protecting their kids or trying to find out who's doing it. They just want to be part of the buzz, part of the furore, part of all of the crazed happenings around it.
That flag overlay's a good point, actually, because I remember when I think there was a terrorist attack in Paris, the Charlie Hebdo, and obviously everyone in Europe's done that whole French flag overlay over their Facebook photo. I think like a day before, 200 kids and students were murdered in Pakistan by separatists.
Jesus.
I didn't see one Pakistani flag on anyone's thing. So it's all relative to where it affects you or whether you can relate to the victim.
Yeah.
So they obviously... I'm not saying every individual didn't give a crap about these kids in Pakistan, but it's just they're only hurt because it happened close to home. Yeah. Almost, isn't it?
But I don't even necessarily think that they're hurt. They just want to let other people think that they are of good conscience and moral upstanding. It's like when the atrocities happened in Ukraine with Russia. All everyone was talking about was the war on Ukraine. Everyone putting up the flags in the streets. Brilliant. Support it. Brilliant. 2 weeks later, whatever it was, a 96-year-old woman passed away, the Queen, and everyone forgets about that. Even the media stopped talking about the fact that there is a conflict going on. People are getting killed in their thousands every day, but because an elderly woman, and no disrespect to the Queen or the royal family,
but it's not a tragedy.
It's sad, but I'm sorry, but a 96-year-old woman dying is not news.
No,
that's good innings. Most of us will be lucky to get there.
Yeah.
So that the film does, again, 100 years ago, the film does that. It speaks to society's need to be part of something, to be outraged as a group, that herd mentality.
Oh, how clever was that part in the film where they show that sort of the crowd are so anxious to find a killer, anyone, that they're accusing people of the crime without any evidence, and you can almost feel that lynching coming on. You're like, oh God, yeah, it's Schofield. He skipped the line again.
Get him. Yeah, get him. And a year before, everyone was saying how brave Schofield was for coming out of the closet and saying that he was gay, and being in a position where he felt comfortable to be able to come out. A year later, he jumped a queue off with his head. That is the society back then, society now, and it is alarming how the two are still so fucking similar.
Oh, we're all fucking idiots.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And talking about fucking idiots, my dislikes are idiotic, and they are based on the time of the film, basically. And my top of the list is the production value and acting. Now, it sounds sacrilege to say it, but it's an obvious result of it being a film from 1931. Whilst the film itself is brilliant, there is no denying that the quality of acting and camera work pales in comparison to modern filmmaking. Now, I know I'm sounding like a cretin for flagging that, but if you're looking at it purely aesthetically, if you're looking at it purely from acting talent, of course it's going to be dated. It's nearly a century old. It is a gripe that's easy to look past when you consider just how old M is.
It's a different genre of acting, though, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it's fascinating to see the evolution of cinema by watching a film that was an undeniable trendsetter. So that gripe is so minimal, but there is certain scenes where the killer's in a court with criminals and they're deciding his fate.
That's good acting.
And loads of people jump up and shout, "Go kill him, get rid of him," and everyone's having their say. And there's a bit in the film, this old boy gets up, shouts like a goat, and then says something. Yeah, he literally makes that noise, and it's such a small dislike, but
I love that.
It's hilarious, but it's not meant to be in the film.
I think his character's going to say something, but because he's German, it doesn't sound like
Oh, so
I think he's saying like, I want to say something.
I don't believe that.
Because he's German and he's a homeless beggar, he goes,
I don't think that when Germans are trying to find their words, they bar.
Bark and bar.
Yeah. And my other dislike, it's not even related to the film, but it pissed me off, so I'm going to say it. And adverts. The only copy of
That's
them...
your fucking fault.
Well, I know. Let me finish. The only copy of them that I could find was on Amazon Prime on this app I'd never heard of called Freevee. Whilst I enjoyed that I could watch this classic without paying for it, I felt it was disrespectful to have so many adverts spread out through such an iconic classic. I loved the film. I'd have loved it even more if it wasn't constantly interrupted by jarring adverts. Now, if this was a shit straight-to-streaming film starring Ludacris and Vin Diesel or any B-list actor that aren't really that talented, I couldn't have given less of a shit if there was adverts sprinkled throughout of it. I would have welcomed it. I could have gone and made a cup of tea, gone to the toilet. But in a film where it is so highly regarded as an absolute classic, in the 1001 films to watch before you die, to have adverts every 20 minutes, it was jarring. I wish I'd known it was available for free on YouTube before watching it twice.
Always start there with old films because of the public domain thing.
Lesson learned now.
Yeah. Has a film ever made you want to have a shit?
What do you mean?
Well, you said you can stop in the advert and go to the toilet, but
I didn't say shit.
What, wee?
Oh, yeah, just go through it. I didn't specify the toilet.
Oh, sorry.
But that's a good question. Has a film ever made me want to shit?
Into the Wild.
Yeah.
Because that whole freeing experience of laying cable while you're watching a deer. Beautiful.
Well, when after seeing Into the Wild as a 19, 20-year-old, I went for a walk in the woods with some mates, probably about 20 minutes away from my house, and I laid a log in the woods because of that film.
And you wrote something on a tree.
Yeah.
What did you write?
I wrote a poem.
What was it?
It was nonsense.
Say it.
I don't remember the poem. But because I watched Into the Wild and it was at a time of my life where I would partake in cannabis, I smoked it then. I really connected to that film and I was like, I'm gonna go exploring. Mm-hmm. So I took my mate for a walk in the woods, had a poo, had a poem pre-written out with a different name, different alias.
It's a Seth Rogen film.
It could be. And we built a base and I nailed my poem onto a tree.
And what was your sign off?
I don't want to say.
Say it.
I called myself Stretch Wild Child.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a problem. I was impressionable then. I'm impressionable now. But
hold on, my phone's going. It's Judd Apatow.
it could be a film of his, couldn't it? Yeah. My final dislike was it's silent or shouty.
Yeah, there were scenes where there's no noise.
So let's be honest, the German tongue isn't the most pretty language. In the film, it's either silent or they're screaming. Now, there's bound to be uproar in a movie where the focus is the killing of children. But the contrast between very quiet scenes and loud Germans shouting over one another was a little unsettling to my delicate ears. There's also a hell of a lot of whistling, and I don't like whistling, whether it's a serial killer whistling or just anyone whistling. Whistling's only fun to the person that's doing it.
In the toilet, always. There's always a guy whistling at a urinal. Always.
It's like, look how happy I am today. Hear my whistle. No, just do that awkward fake smile thing and nod while you walk past me. Don't whistle.
Oh, it's the heavy breathers that come in. And then as they take that breath in, you know what's about to come. They go, they fart. And you're like, for fuck's sake, man.
A lot of toilet
You can
talk
be
today.
a man without being a pig.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, it's those same guys that go into a public toilet and think it's acceptable to hock up.
Oh, for
and it's like,
God's
why?
sake.
Look, if you might have a cold, you might have a bit of extra snot. Do it when no one else is around. I don't want to hear you bring up your Gilbert while I'm trying to have a leak. It's disgusting.
Dirty.
There's
evil.
There's no need for it.
Feckers.
Yeah. I've got some questions. And I think you've answered this one already, but did watching M make you want to watch more Fritz Lang films? And did the experience make you curious to discover more highly regarded vintage cinema?
Yeah, bitter.
It did. Is there one that you think, after watching this, that's going to be my next foray? That's the one I'm going to tackle next? Or
I want to do Nosferatu and I want to do Vertigo,
can I ask you something?
but that's a bit later, I think.
You say Nosferatu?
Nosferatu, sorry.
Yeah, that's Dracula.
Dracula, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because you kept saying that. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never seen it, but it's meant to be amazing.
Oh, and Dr. Cagliari's Ferrari.
Yeah.
Dr. Cagliari's helicopter.
Cabinet.
Oh,
Dr.
I was so far off.
Cagliari's Cabinet of Curious.
Of
I don't know.
Yeah.
But something like that.
Yeah.
So one of those you think you want to tackle?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm interested in Doctor Strangelove. I've not seen that.
That's 70s, no, 60s, isn't it?
Oh, okay, we need to go a
Kubrick.
bit older than that then.
Kubrick, isn't it? He did, Space Odyssey, Doctor Strangelove, and the Atomic Bomb. And
That's what I mean. You don't even have to go far back as the 30s to realise that my knowledge of old cinema is lacking.
Not really.
I haven't. There's so many I haven't seen. Like I still want to. I haven't seen The Birds, Alfred Hitchcock film.
I like The
There's
Birds.
so many of those classics that I'd be interested to.
Psycho's great.
I'd like to see Metropolis, the other Lang film. I don't know how readily available that one is. I'd rather not watch it with adverts, so I might try and see if that one's on YouTube based on your advice.
Watch the original All Quiet on the Western Front, because they're about to do the third rendition of that.
That's out on Netflix already.
Yeah, so they did two. They did there's like one in like the 20s, and then they did one in the 70s with the lead guy from the Waltons, and Ian Holm was in that one. And now they're doing the third one. But I think the third one is a German.
Oh, cool.
Whereas the second one was Americans and English actors being German. So the lesser of the three, I would say.
Oh.
But yeah, that's worth a watch. Hitler and Goebbels boycotted All Quiet on the Western Front, the original. I don't know why, can't remember.
Because they're idiots, probably.
Well, I think it showed Germans losing a war. It didn't fit their regime.
Well, they did anyway, didn't they?
They lost both, yes.
Do you think society will ever tire of its fascination with serial killers, or will our thirst for knowledge about the worst humanity has to offer never be quenched?
I think with the big strides in the world of technology and the digital evolution of like phones and security cameras and fingerprints and DNA, serial killers are getting less and less effective. And it's a horrible thing to say, but you think in the 60s, just after flower power, the amount of hitchhikers and the amount of free love, man, serial killers were killing in the 30s, like 30 plus victims. I think that's changed a lot, and it's going to be even harder and harder for them to not get caught within the first 2 or 3 murders now. So the fascination might stay, but it's so dark and ghoulish to say this, but when you hear that there's been a shooting in America and 3 or 4 people have died, you probably don't give that much of a read now. But if you see one where it's 45 people have died, you'll be more into it, because you'll be like, wow, 45 people.
What? Yeah.
So now it's almost a numbers game.
And also now, like, because of the technological advances, because of social media presence, because of CCTV, DNA, all of that stuff, it would be so much harder to get away with those numbers. And I just don't think in this day and age people could get away with it. Now, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing, yeah.
Obviously. I can't stress that enough. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's where technology is good.
So technology is advanced, but society's fascination with killing hasn't, I don't think. I think there's always that fascination. As time goes on, we're in an era where we can look at Ted Bundy, and we can look at Jeffrey Dahmer, and there's films and TV shows and documentaries being made about it because it's further along from the incident. Yeah. So it's deemed more acceptable to look into it. There's still people out there that are related and lost people to those criminals that would still be highly affected by that stuff. But because it's been decades now, we're allowed to look at things that have been said and evidence that's been unearthed and stuff. And I don't think that fascination will ever wave. I think as time progresses, we'll see even more stuff.
Well, I think that whole Lynch mentality in M that's shown, where the crowd just want to get anyone, even if this old boy talks to a little girl and gives her the time of day. I mean, you think about the Madeleine McCann case and how quickly because they couldn't find a killer within, say, 3-4 months, the public started saying, oh, it's the mum and dad. It's the mum and dad. Now, without any evidence, and say there is circumstantial evidence, but why wouldn't there be? They were her mum and dad. She'd say the hair fibres, etc.
Well,
that's
yeah,
circumstantial.
of course, yeah.
But the fact that, like, it's almost like people want it to be the mum and dad because they want to hate them. Yeah. For whatever reason, they want to hate them. Oh, she washed Madeleine's teddy bear a day after she went missing. We have to hate this woman. Yeah. We have to have someone to blame because we feel sad that a little girl's been taken. Yeah. What if that was my girl? Yeah. It's like that. So it's mad. It's scary on both sides. The killer's scary, and so is the bloody crowd that want blood.
Exactly, yeah.
They're both terrifying.
Exactly, yeah. And it's what makes it scarier if it's the mob mentality. That's people in their tens, hundreds, thousands.
Just want blood.
A killer is a isolated figure normally that does these awful detestable things independently, but then you get that mob mentality that is right when you've got a sort of a hive mind, all angry and hungry for blood. Like, yeah, it is scary.
But they've traded in pitchforks for social media attacks, haven't they?
They really
So they're no
have.
longer turning up to doors with pitchforks and fire. They literally just go on Facebook and write,
cancel culture.
Mum did it.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
That is, yeah.
That's enough to get a bunch of people on board.
It's frightening, isn't it? Final question. Do you think insanity is a good enough reason for a killer to be able to get away with murder?
They say they're not responsible. But if they show, in my opinion, if they show even an ounce of the attempt of covering up their tracks, they are responsible. I get it if a killer, if they find a guy in the middle of broad daylight in Oxford Circus just hacking away at someone and laughing in his own shit, he's mental because he doesn't care about, he's not trying to hide it. If you can hide it and you have apparatus to help you achieve it, so let's say Peter Law's character in this, he goes through the effort of buying sweets and a balloon to kill them. So he shows preparation.
Yeah, forward planning,
Yeah. So disorganised, that's the only area where you could say they are nut jobs. So disorganised killers did something in broad daylight, killed someone, and then sat there waiting for the police laughing. That one, more than likely, if it's guaranteed they're going to be kept in isolation and not escape, etc. Nowadays, obviously, with prisons and stuff, especially in the Western world, I'd say it's very hard to escape prisons, etc.
Yeah.
So there is an argument now where you could do that. But I think if any inkling of being organised for your kill...
That's why it's such an interesting topic of conversation, and it's such a grey area. Because there's nothing to say you could be someone who wants to kill and gets a kick out of the thought of killing. And then from day one, your first mission to go about that is right off the bat, act like you're crazy. And if all the evidence leads to the first port of call is that you're someone who's not sound of mind have done it, you're going to see it as someone who's insanity. Now, what's to say that person hasn't foreshadowed it, thought enough that if I go into this appearing crazy from day dot, that I can get away with this? And that's why a
lot of them know that in advance.
Exactly. And I know the mind is such a amazing thing. Like I can't even comprehend what the mind can do, and I can't understand the fractures of the mind that lead people to do these insane things, and the reasoning behind any of it. I can never understand any of that. And
that's of course, the fascination.
Exactly, that is the fascination. But I've got IBS. If I went to a public place and I have IBS and I eat something that triggers my IBS, and I stand there and I pull down my trousers and I squid ink like an octopus everywhere.
Oh my.
I'm done for indecent exposure and I'm done for criminal damage.
Yeah.
I've got a condition. I can't necessarily control that. Now, that's obviously a melodramatic case if that happened. My argument would be, well...
You knowingly put something in your body that made you have that.
I think, and this might be a bit of a blanket statement, and it's not meant to upset or inflame anyone, but I don't think that just saying someone's insane is enough to be able to get away with it.
No.
Because if you've taken a life, regardless of whether you knew you've done it or not, that's a crime. Same as what I would have done would have been, a crime if I'd shat everywhere.
But they're giving into compulsion, aren't they? So, and we all know that we can practice restraint in other areas.
And I guess that is the defining point, isn't it? If they can't act with restraint, if they can't stop themselves, if it is a compulsion, then
that's why there's so many precursors to why a killer became a killer, and that's why they say brain damage is a factor, child abuse is a factor, but you can also be born with a gene that can make you lack empathy. Don't think it's enough for a doctor to say, well, he was born and lacked empathy and then had a head injury. Fred West had it, came off a motorbike when he was young and hit his head, but that doesn't justify him killing 22 women.
That's exactly my point.
And you can't say, it's an insanity. Like, that's why if you can give Dharma and Kemper any respect, it's the fact that they held their hands up and said, no, I did this for me.
Yeah. And
they were transparent with the police after being caught.
Yeah.
The thing I bloody hate is the killers that finally get into prison and then say, well, now I believe in Jesus, Lord, our Saviour. Oh, fudge off.
It's too late for that, mate.
Oh, it just makes you laugh, doesn't it? and the church accepts them.
Well, they have to.
Christianity, respect and stuff. And I'm like, but that's can't you see what they're doing? They're trying to get paroled.
Yeah.
Yeah, bellend.
Yeah, they've found enlightenment, so it's all okay now. What would you rate M out of 10?
9.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I only say 9 because I found that last 20 seconds of the film quite weak. They should have ended it with the head of the mobster standing up to shoot Peter Lorre and the police coming in, and it just looks like a standoff, and then it ends, not knowing what happened. But seeing the courtroom and then seeing the mum go, "This doesn't bring our kids back," and then it just goes black screen. I thought it was a little weak. I would have gone 10 plus otherwise.
Yeah, the ending did soften the blow a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, I reckon it should have looked like a Mexican standoff, and it just went to black.
Yeah.
Peter Lorre in between the police and the gangsters with justice unresolved.
Yeah.
The fact that he does go to court and the mum goes, "This won't bring our kid back."
Yeah.
I just thought it was a bit weird.
It leaves you, the audience, in a no man's land. It's like, well, okay, we're led to believe that he's going to see the victim's parents are going to see some form of justice, but we don't see what that is. We don't see the court case. Yeah. And then it's not left ambiguous. So it's not like you say, if it was a standoff, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what happened there. You'd be wanting more. I agree. The ending does certainly lessen the overall impact.
We could proposition J.J. Abrams to do a sequel.
Oh, yeah. And it'd probably be shite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Watched it twice. Was completely captivated both times I watched it. And, yeah, would highly recommend it to anyone that's a fan of the thriller genre. I think it's great.
Boom.
That gives M a total score of 17.5 out of 20. If you like your films to be ahead of their time, or if you like timeless, terrifying cinema that can still impress at nearly 100 years old, then M could be a film for you. Consider watching this one if you enjoyed 7, Silence of the Lambs, and 12 Angry Men. Should we play a game?
See.
The game in question is What the Plot, where the rules are simple and the results quite the opposite. Harry will conceive an original idea from his big and beautiful brain and give birth to a plot. It's then down to me to nurture this thought by providing a film title, genre, cast, and anything else I can think of to raise this brainchild into a fully functioning film concept. Over to you, Harry.
It's approaching Christmas. Journalist Jan Rello has been told that she needs to go to Iceland to report a festive piece.
What's her name again, sorry?
Why does that matter? You can ask me later. Jan Rello.
It might be important.
She's going to film a festive piece. Now you've thrown me off.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were speaking very fast. I'm one man.
Right, journalist Jan Rello.
Yep.
She's been sent to Iceland to do a festive reporting on why Icelandic people, 56% of them believe in elves.
Okay.
It's just a bit of filler for people sitting in their living room drinking a Coke and watching Die Hard, essentially. She gets there, she gets her tour guide to take her out to the Golden Circle where she's going to report on it, and there's a protest going on because they're building a new road straight through the middle of what local Icelandic people believe to be where elves reside, where they live. And she starts to get a bit more interested in the case. She goes, "These people really believe in it," and her guide's like, "Yeah, they really do. And this road's going to go straight through their house, and it's going to ruin it." And she's like, "Okay." She's skeptic, obviously. Who wouldn't be? Anyway, they carry on with the road building, and she goes back to Reykjavik, and she has drinks because it's Christmas, and she's about to go away. When boom, people start getting snuffed out in the city. Their throats cut by little blades, little arrows in them. The elves have rebelled. This is a Christmas horror action movie where a journalist who was reporting on Christmas is now surviving in the Icelandic city of Reykjavik, where elves are killing people because their habitat has been ruined by a road.
So it's confirmed that elves are real? Or they...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, her skepticism.
And why
we are her?
Why is this journalist being attacked by the elves?
She's not being attacked because their habitat's been destroyed by a motorway and greed and capitalism. The elves have finally shown themselves. So the 56% that believed in them are more than likely safe, whereas the big corporations and the bankers and the ones trying to just build money, they're just getting snuffed out. But it's a free for all. It's anarchy, kind of like a Gremlins, I suppose.
So maybe this journalist,
Jan Rello,
yeah, is she starts thinking she's there to do a fluff piece,
yeah,
and thinks it's quite trivial, and then sees that people see you've got elf enthusiasts that are quite supportive of the fact that this road could be going through this elf habitat
You know, in real life, they
wiping them out.
divert roads around rocks that they think elves live in Iceland. That's true.
Can you confirm what an elf actually is, or what the belief of...
I think their belief of an elf is like a little pixie thing that lives in the mountains. Like, I think even an Icelandic politician swore on the Bible that elves saved him in a car crash.
Okay, so this is interesting.
She's the skeptic. She represents us.
But then, because she's on the ground level, maybe she sees some things that makes her turn into a believer. And
she sees them essentially killing people.
Can everyone see these elves?
Yeah, they're out now. It's done.
They're out.
They've decided to finally show themselves in full force. That's why 56% believe in them, because they've seen them. The other ones haven't seen them because they're not enlightened to them. And so when they finally reveal themselves, it's almost like a genocide of the ones that have ruined their landscape. I'm thinking like, comedy Christmas horror.
See, I'm
Frosty.
I'm not. I'm
Gremlins.
seeing full blown horror.
Yeah.
I'm seeing.
How can it not be funny though?
Well, I don't think I think that elves could be depicted as really fierce. Like, you might not even see them. You can only see them in the shadows, and I think they could look quite
blade cutthroat.
You could see the camera go, and they look quite pretty, and then they turn with the light, and you see another side of their face, and they're not pretty at all.
Would it still be a comedy without even trying to be a comedy?
I'm going to go
Black Sheep
with this is a full-on horror
Yes.
that leads its audience to think it's just like Jan Rello. Like her going there to do a fluff piece about elves. Oh, look, there's road. Or almost laughing at it. I think the audience think it's going to go that way, and it turns out to be a really sincere thing. And I think maybe it's like a revolution of the elves. They're sick of it. Like this road going through there, being laughed at, mocked. They see all these people going there, get their pictures taken where they might live, and they've had enough of it. They consider themselves superior beings, maybe. So I would like to see this as a Christmas out-and-out horror that's full of like Icelandic lore, and these elves are painted in a light where they're just whimsical, they're nice, they're friendly, they're like Tinkerbell, all of that, but really they're nasty fuckers. And they've spent years building up their civilization and getting angry.
So they don't look like Smurfs.
No, they
look really horrible, like a chupacabra.
And I reckon they could actually be massive.
Big rather than little.
But like when you've folklore seen them, you've just seen their little pixie faces, yeah? So imagine their head the size of a baseball, but they're actually like 8 foot tall. Really like
Slenderman.
Gangly, yeah.
Yeah, so
like skeletal. Good. But so all you ever really see of them is their little faces and their little wings. That's just the top part. And then they're huge fucking
They're
horrible, nasty fuckers. So it's a full blown horror.
That's cool, because you're right, because everyone's depiction of them would be this small little thing with pointy ears.
Pixie,
but you're right.
Yeah.
If when it's revealed in the film, almost like vampires turning up in Dusk Till Dawn, what?
Yeah.
Almost like, oh my God, what is that?
So you could have Jen Rello, the journalist. She's just doing this because it's part of her job. She could look in once all the protesters have gone home. She's on her way back to her hotel in the middle of nowhere. She could like peek into this home, and she could have had a few drinks. And she's like, "Oh, I'm a journalist. I just want to hear your side of the story. Like, oh, come on, if you're there." And this cute little face could pop out of a hole, and then you see these really spindly, huge fingers come out, and it comes out, and it's like 9 foot tall.
Oh.
Yeah. And it could tell her to run, and she doesn't listen to it. Maybe these elves are only after the natives who are trying to ruin our home.
The non-believers.
Yeah, that have laughed at their whimsy for all these years. Maybe they're giving her a chance to escape because she's an outsider. Their beef aren't with her; it's with the local Icelandic community.
Yeah, because let's say she wanted to be a reporter on the ground in a war zone, real news.
Yeah,
in what she calls real news. So when she's being sent off to Iceland to do an elf piece near Christmas, that she realises she is in a war zone.
Maybe she could be a really decent journalist, but her hunger to try and uncover depth in stories when it's not there, maybe she pisses off the powers to be, the editors, and too many times she's use too many resources to just do a basic story, and she's a vigilante journalist who's always looking to uncover truth that's not there. So they're sick of it. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to send you fucking Iceland in Christmas, and you're going to report on fucking elves. Fuck you.
Little did they know.
Yeah.
It's the news of the century.
And she's actually a really competent reporter. She's really, really smart, really likable. So
don't you dare cast Olivia Wilde.
Okay, I'll have to change that. Oh. No, it's obviously not Olivia Wilde. I
was thinking of Jewel.
So in summary, it's approaching Christmas. Journalist Jan Rello is sent to Iceland to do a festive fluff piece on why Icelandics believe in elves. She uncovers a protest where the believers of elves are disputing the possible building of a road that's meant to be going straight through where believers think that the elves are housed, basically. And during her time there, Jan Rello uncovers some truths. She discovers.
Well, I think like a purge starts.
Murders start happening.
Yeah.
The Icelandic natives are very scared. No other journalists can get in and out because there's this
weather
abundance. Weather's awful.
Bad weather.
Abundance of murders are happening. People can't see any evidence or anything because these elves, there might be magical elements to them, whatever. And it's down to Jan Rello to uncover what's going on.
Jan Rello.
So, directing the film, I see this as a straight out Christmas horror that will fuck with you, and it has no right fucking with you because you think this is going to be a nice little, like Jan Rello, nice little fluff piece, no danger whatsoever. I'd have the director Ari Aster, who did Hereditary and Midsummer, who I think in Midsummer he manages to make an environment that doesn't seem like it should be scary, terrifying.
Yes.
Sunlight,
love that,
lovely spring colours, and it makes you feel so uneasy and unsettled. So I think he'd be really, really good with a film like this. I think the first 30-40 minutes you could trick the audience to think this is just going to be a silly Christmas film about a journalist who goes to find out about the elves, and she's going to meet someone she loves, and
that's a great shout.
Yeah,
that's changed the film for me.
And starring in the film as Jan Rello, I'd have Olivia Colman. Now, I think she's fantastic. I think she'd be very believable as a hard-working English journalist who's pissed off that she's been sent there, but she's a professional. She's going to go and do the job, get it done. And
do you think she'd say yes to this job?
But this film? Yeah, she would. Ari Aster, everyone wants to work with him. Horror at Christmas? Fuck yeah, she'd work with that. And yes, and the film turns out to be this really horrible, gruesome, terrifying depiction of these elves that aren't little pixie things at all, but 8-foot beast things that are going on mad killing spree.
And it's got political subtext of global warming and capitalism.
Yep.
Greed.
Let's throw that in there to add substance to the piece, yeah. And so I'd have Ari Aster directing, Olivia Colman starring, and I'd call the film Elves. Merry Christmas from Reykjavik. I'm Jan Rello, and I'm here with a group of elf believers who are protesting the new build of a super highway. It threatens to destroy the home of these enchanting little creatures. I'm joined by Igmar Sigurdsson, who is outraged by the proposed highway. Igmar, can we have a few words?
Yes, you shouldn't be laughing. They can probably hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Igmar. I'm not laughing. It's a very unusual story, that's all.
They aren't what you think they are. They exist.
Okay, Igmar. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Back to you in the studio. Hello. Can you hear me? I'm Jan Rello, and this is an emergency broadcast. The idea of elves we have today comes from Norse mythology. The elves in Norse mythology were called the Alpha and were believed to cause illness, have strong magic, and be very beautiful. They are not beautiful. They are not friendly. They are real. They are dangerous. They are showing no mercy. Please send help.